And there's nothing that people love more than being shown how good you are at magic. So here is one thing you could do to show them how much better you are at them in magic. So here's what we do. We get a deck of ordinary bicycle bourbon playing cards that are I'm sure the talk of the town. Oh man, and we give it a couple cuts, a couple of these cuts, and then we say, oh, we're gonna need actually the help of some cards here. Yeah, how about we'll use the aces. Are you good with that? Are you fine with us using the? Because this is gonna be a gambling demonstration, and I don't know if you know anything about gambling, sir, but I do it every day of my life when I decide to step out the door and not out the closet. So here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna take some. We're gonna make some poker hands here because you're gonna make every decision here, but ultimately you're gonna see that it doesn't matter what decisions you make because I could greatly affect the decisions you make based on my psychological mastery and your weakness. You are weak. I am strong. I do magic and you do not. So you better. Oh boy, you better just sit there and watch this. So you then collect all these little halves here, and you give it a little bit of a cut, a shuffle, if you would, to make sure that the aces are well mixed among the poker hands there. But we have enough for exactly 4 hands of four-handed poker. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. Ultimately, you hand this to the spectator, and you tell him, "Oh, just name any number here, and we'll move that many cards from the top to the bottom of this little stack here." So you know that there's no way that we're cheating here. Yeah, you see. So let's say they say 5. You say, great, just take 5 cards from the top of the deck and put it on the bottom. Maybe they can hand this to another spectator, and everyone gets involved here where they just take, for example, let's say somebody says 3. They take 3 and put it on the bottom. But case in point, we start in a position that they freely chose. That's kind of the point here. So we're going to just deal the cards out here just in 4 hands of poker. And the spectators are going to make all the decisions here, which is why this is going to be ultimately amazing. So you tell the spectator, go ahead and put your hand down on whichever 2 piles you want. I don't want to influence you psychologically, but before you do anything, keep in mind that I did gesture when I said put your hands on whichever pile you want. So I might, be inclining for you to put your hands on these 2 piles. But then again, it might be a double bluff. So you and your feeble mind make whatever decision you want, but just know that I'm inside of you right now. So the spectator makes up their little mind, and they put their hands on these 2 piles. You go, great, you know what? I'm going to take these other 2 piles for myself. Now, what I want you to do, sir, is I want you to lift up whichever hand you want. So the spectator, they have their hands on whichever piles they want. And then you tell them that you're going to mirror their actions here. So again, whatever decisions they make is what you're going to go for. So the spectator, let's say they decide to lift up this hand over here. So the spectator will be doing this sort of weird thing, but facing you, of course. So you go, okay, of course, great. So now I just want you to be sure that that's your final decision, sir. And of course, they're sure because in their feeble mind, that's a decision that they've made. So they go with that. But here you see that the spectator, which is doing this now, you say, oh, but you could have had this hand over here, much like you could have picked this hand for me, sir. But let's see the hand you chose for yourself that you decide to keep underneath your hand. And the spectator has they have what we call in the business a shit hand here of nothing. And you say that's great because you have managed to leave me with the 4 aces. How does that make you feel, though? Honestly, let's just talk about this. How does that make you feel, like inside of you right now? Weak, a little bit. Did I prove my prowess over you? Am I superior to you? Good. Then I've done my job as a magician.
Gay transition.
Oh, here's the trick. Here's the trick. Here's the secret. Oh boy. So here's a trick that I learned many years ago in a children's book for magic of all places. But here's what we do as creative cunts here in the magic community. I try to take a trick and see how I can improve it to make it fit my own needs. And this is how I did that. So this is what the trick entails. You have the aces on top, and you produce them in however way you want. If you want, you could do this old school right here, Gary Roulette's sort of production of the aces, whatever it is that it takes for you to get the aces out. And you say that you're gonna have a little experiment here in psychological manipulation, which is not at all what's taking place because it's a self-working card trick. So you take the aces here. Now, again, this is where the preference, this is where your preference as a magician kind of shines through because you have several options here. If you want, you could openly display the aces and set it up just like I did in the performance here, and it's going to be still a strong trick. However, if you choose not to do that, and if you don't want to do that, then you still have options here because what you could do is you could start with the aces on top of the deck and deal them into 4 hands just like this, and the results are going to be the same. You're going to be in the exact same position that you need to be in for the trick, which is all the aces need to be fourth, right? You see this? So you're going to be in the same position for the trick here. But I do prefer just having the aces out and being as fair as possible, setting this up in front of them, because it doesn't really matter. The principle here is going to be a cyclical stack. And so you're going to be cutting the deck and not shuffling it. So you're not really going to disturb your little order here. And also the problem with that initial first way of doing a trick is that you're going to be dealing 4 hands of 4 cards twice, which might be a little bit intensive for some people. So in the way that I performed it, you notice that I just put 3 cards on top of each ace. And I didn't have to deal much. That process is done. So you don't have to deal it twice. And Lord knows that dealing tricks are already stigmatized, much like other communities. So here, what you've done is you've taken 3 cards and put it on top of each and every single ace. And that's it. So now when we collect these cards, you're going to be good to go. You're going to be good to go. But of course, if we start dealing the cards out now, the spectators are going to say, hey, sir, that's not impressive at all. What are you doing? So we're going to have to mask this whole situation, much like you mask your... So we're going to go over this lovely false shuffle that I first saw in a Daryl series on false cuts and shuffles. RIP, OG Daryl there. But of course, I'm going to have the actual description and the crediting in the description. Sorry, I'm not going to have the description in the description. So here, we're going to do this shuffle that looks like you are, in fact, cutting the deck at multiple random spots and actually randomly shuffling up the cards. But really, all we've done is the same as that. So essentially, this right here is the same as this. But you see how this looks like a lot more is happening than that, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to spread the cards here in the right hand. We're just going to spread a chunk and have them in the right hand. Now, in the left hand, what's going to happen is instead of taking the top cards and putting them in random spots here, we're going to take this bottom stock right here and push it with our fingers. So far, we've pushed some cards off into our right hand, just like this. And we're going to take some cards from the bottom and put it on top. You see what's happening here? So we take some cards from the bottom and put it on top. And then we take some cards from the top here and put it on the bottom. So what this is essentially doing is just giving the deck a cut. You see, if we do this with the whole deck, you'll see. I'm going to face the deck here, just like this. And you see what's happening. We're just taking cards from the bottom, putting them on top, cards from the top, putting it on the bottom, and repeating this action over and over again. I'm going to drop some hot Central European slow motion here, just for you guys. So here it goes. Man, production quality like that doesn't come on a channel-y basis. You should only subscribe and check out the other stuff that I'm shilling on this channel. So after a couple of those shuffles, what that's done is essentially cut the cards, which doesn't affect anything. When we deal them out, you're going to see, you clever cat, that nothing has in fact happened. So we give a couple of these shuffles, ultimately handing the deck to the spectator or keeping the deck in your hands, the little stack in your hands, if you're not comfortable with giving the cards to the spectator because insecurities. So here's what either you or they are going to do. We're going to do this wonderful ploy by Danny D'Artiste. Oh boy, if you were here, I would do crazy things to that tummy. Yeah. Oh man, I would do insane things to that tummy. What's gonna happen is that we're gonna ask the spectator to name any number they want between, let's say, 1 and 5, and that's how many cards we're gonna take from the bottom, from the top, and put on the bottom. What does this do? Again, we're cutting the cards here, right? This is all that's happening. We're cutting the cards. But by giving the spectator this alleged choice, it's another layer in the onion that is the deception of this card trick. It's, oh, man. So we tell the spectator, oh, name any number you want, and we're going to take that many cards from the top, and you're going to determine the starting position here, sir. So let's say they say 5. We just take 5 cards from the top and put it on the bottom of the deck. Again, that doesn't really do anything. All it's doing is cutting the cards. But because we're giving some sort of arbitrary choice to the spectator, they feel empowered. So when you are done and satisfied with that, I usually like to peek at the bottom card and see if it's an ace. Because if that's an ace, then that tells me that the last hand that I'm going to deal is the aces, and I'm good to go. But if not, we're going to have to do a little bit of a ruse here. So we'll go over that. Don't worry, you clever cats. We'll go over that. So here we're going to deal 4 hands of poker, just like this. Now, of course, because we've peeked at the bottom card here, we know that the aces are not in this half. So what are we going to do to find where the aces are? We're going to do this very clever bit that I like I like to call peeking at the fucking hands. So the way we do this is that we're just going to displace the cards like this. You see how it's a mess? We're just going to displace the cards like this and peek at the cards in this way. Again, nonchalantly. We're going to just do this like this. We're not going to make a move of it, but we're just going to just turn the cards this way. That doesn't really do anything for the trick, but it's the justification you need to have for being able to pick the cards up. And we're looking for an ace on the bottom of any one of these halves here. That's what we're looking for. We already eliminated this one, so this one we don't have to necessarily go too hard on, but we see that the aces are here. So we just need to know and keep track of which packet has the aces, which in this case, it's right next to my crotch, which is good because then we could do the patented Pigcake crotch subtlety in that the spectators are not usually going to pick this half because it's so near proximity to my penile area. So we have that working for you. Now, at this point, we're going to go over a sort of rudimentary equivoque technique here, meaning we're not really going to care because ultimately the spectators are either going to end up with the aces or you end up with the aces and you end up being the hero and rubbing it in their little stupid faces. So here we tell the spectator to put their hands on whichever 2 piles they want. If they put their hands on 2 piles that don't have the aces, good, that's fine. You put your hands on the piles, obviously one that does contain the ace, and you keep track of that. Then you're going to go off into the same ideas in the performance. Here you're going to have them lift whichever hand they want. Let's say they lift up this hand right here and you mirror them. You see what's happening. These are the aces. You go, are you sure? You sure? Okay, fine. You could have had these cards. You could have had these cards over here. Check what you had. The spectator checks what they have. Of course, they don't have a good hand and you have the aces and you rub that in their little stupid faces. Now, what happens if the spectator picks the pile that does contain the aces? Well, that's good because then you're the klutz and they're the hero because they found the aces. So let's say the spectator takes these 2 piles. You're leaving you with these 2 piles. Of course, you're going to do the same, but in reverse. They lift up whichever hands they want. Let's say they lift up this hand. You go, great. You sure? You sure you want to lift up that hand, sir? Okay, go ahead. Check the cards that you could have had over here. You could have had these. I could have had these. But you know what? Damn, you seem to be better at this than I thought. You have the aces. Now, if they decide to lift up the other hand here, like this, you say, are you sure? Do you want to change your mind? No? Okay, fine. See, look, you left these cards in the open. You could have had those, but instead you kept your hand on this particular hand of cards here. Oh, boy. So go ahead and check what you got, sir. And they check, and of course, they have the 4 aces, and they end up being the heroes here. So ultimately, it's not even an equivoque. It's just literally tracking where the aces are and making the spectator pick them. With that little hand ruse, that little bit of equivoque hand ruse. So that's a hot, easy trick. It's not really a lot to do. You practice that little shuffle because it's going to aid you in a lot of tricks, especially if you are the type of person that enjoys cyclical stacks. So you enjoy that. You take that to the grave, and I'm going to figure out different ways to find your grave. When I
see you again, when I see you again, when I see you again, when I see you again, when I see you again, when I see you again, when I see